This is China. It's the second largest economy in the world, the largest exporter of goods, and a country that for the last 2 decades has been central to nearly everything we buy. But behind its rise is a story few talk about, one of rigged trade, hired subsidies, and an economic model that's reshaped the world at America's expense. From state-backed companies to manipulated currency, this is how China changed the rules of global trade, and how the United States let it happen. In 2001, China joined the World Trade Organization. It was seen as a turning point the moment China would embrace global norms, open its markets, and play fair. But it didn't quite happen that way. While the US dropped tariffs and welcomed Chinese goods into stores across the country, China kept its own markets heavily protected. American companies were allowed in, but only on China's terms. They had to form partnerships, share technology, and most of the time accept that success in China meant surrendering control. Nearly 3/4 of US firms entering China reported being forced to hand over intellectual property. Trade is supposed to be mutual, but the relationship between China and the West quickly became one-sided. And as we'll see, the effects were enormous. Many of China's largest firms aren't just companies, they're arms of the state. They get cheap land, free energy, and massive state-backed loans. In 2019 alone, China poured over $200 billion into subsidizing its domestic industries. That means a Chinese manufacturer can undercut prices, not because they're better, but because they're backed by Beijing. For more than a decade, China kept the yuan artificially low. Their exports became cheaper, US goods more expensive. But how did they do it? For years, China pegged the yuan to the US dollar, locked in at around 8.28 yuan per dollar. Even after 2005, when they shifted to what's called a managed float, the currency didn't move freely. If the yuan started to rise, China's central bank stepped in and pushed it back down. The system was flexible, but only in theory. The Chinese central bank bought huge amounts of foreign currency, especially US dollars, and at the same time, it sold yuan. This flooded the market with yuan and kept its value low. At its peak, China held over $3 trillion in foreign currency reserves, more than any country in history. China also blocked money from flowing freely across its borders. Citizens couldn't move large amounts of cash out, and foreign investors couldn't easily buy Chinese assets. This wasn't just smart economics, it was a mercantilist strategy. Keep the currency low, boost manufacturing, build up reserves, repeat. China didn't force American companies to move jobs overseas. They didn't have to.
China figures prominently in Walmart's relentless drive to lower costs.
Nike is able to harness low-wage structures through use of its flexible production system.
In boardrooms across the US, CEOs saw an opportunity. Lower wages, fewer regulations, bigger margins. And they took it. From Harvard MBAs to Wall Street analysts, a new consensus emerged. Offshoring wasn't just smart, it was inevitable. Companies like General Electric, Apple, and Walmart became early adopters. Factories closed, supply chains shifted, entire towns lost their industrial base, while stock prices soared.
All-time highs, all-time highs.
All-time highs, a lot of sectors hitting all-time highs.
All-time closing high.
Between 2000 and 2010, the US lost 5.5 million manufacturing jobs, the steepest decline since the Great Depression. Cheap Chinese goods flooded stores, corporate profits exploded. The theory behind it all is something called creative destruction. Coined by economist Joseph Schumpeter, it describes how old industries die so new ones can rise. In theory, it's a cycle. Jobs lost today are replaced by better ones tomorrow. Here's the problem. The destruction happened in America. And the creation, that happened in China. The global elite got rich, offshoring production, slashing costs, inflating profits. For them, it was efficient. For everyone else, it was a betrayal. Globalization wasn't a natural force. It was a top-down project, designed in universities, financed on Wall Street, and executed in Beijing. As jobs disappeared and industries vanished, one question remained. Why didn't people notice? While wages stagnated, prices fell. TVs, electronics, appliances, all made in China, all cheaper. People weren't earning more, but they could still buy more. That's how the illusion of prosperity survived. From 1979 to 2019, the real wage for US men barely moved, but store shelves were full. They said globalization was good for consumers, but it came at a price, paid in shuttered factories, lost skills, and broken towns. It wasn't a free market, it was distraction economy. From Ohio to Michigan, from Pennsylvania to Illinois, the price was paid in silence. Over 75,000 factories closed in the US between 2001 and 2018. In some towns, entire industries vanished overnight. Opioid addiction surged, suicide rates rose, life expectancy declined in places that once powered the US economy. All because we were distracted by the lure of cheap goods. This isn't a new story. We've seen it before. In the 1800s, Britain was the world's industrial superpower.
Besides exporting her locomotives, her steam engines, her textiles, and other finished products, England exported industrialism itself.
Then it embraced free trade too early and was overtaken by the very countries it helped to modernize. From 1870 to 1913, Britain's share of global manufacturing was cut in half. The US is now walking that same road. Free trade doesn't build empires, it ends them if you don't play it strategically. During World War II, the United States was known as the arsenal of democracy. It could outbuild any rival on Earth. Today, the US can't even produce its own antibiotics. Over 80% of active pharmaceutical ingredients are imported. America imports nearly all of its solar panels and most of its lithium-ion batteries. During COVID, hospitals ran out of masks because even basic protective equipment was outsourced. You can't defend your economy if you don't control it. What happens if we stay on this path? America becomes a design and debt economy, a nation that consumes but doesn't produce. Semiconductors, electric vehicles, drones, missiles, each more reliant on supply chains controlled by rivals. For years we were told this is just economics, that it didn't matter where things were made, only how cheap they were. But that was never true, because what looks like a trade model was actually a quiet war. One most people never realized they were in. Factories closed, towns collapsed, and economic power shifted silently to strategic adversaries. And now the question is simple. How much longer can a superpower afford to outsource its future? Because you can't lead the world if you've given away your ability to build it.